So I'm Victoria Alexander. I started Realty Collective 19 years ago to defy the stereotypes associated with real estate brokers and real estate transactions in New York. And I continue to do that. We have developed this class to educate you about the process. It's an overwhelming amount of information, and the internet doesn't really help you. And so this is a great starting place for you to get a general idea of it. We're not going to be able to answer all of your questions. The other thing that Realty Collective provides is a library of resources that we have curated so that at every step of the way of the deal, you are getting information that pertains to your specific step that you're at, so that you don't feel lost or overwhelmed or Googling at 3 a.m. I've laid everything out for you so that each step of the way, even the challenges, are there at your fingertips. Like, these are the ways to things to be wary of at this stage. So we have been doing this class for almost not the whole 19 years, but close to it. And I think it's a really great way for people to understand the buying process. My job is a buyer's broker. I focus a lot and with helping first-time home buyers. It's something that I really appreciated when I was buying. And that's why I think that creating these library of resources and tools for buyers can really help guide them through this process to make it as least stressful as possible. Because we all know moving in general is stressful in New York City. Buying real estate is stressful. So we're trying to make it as least stressful as possible by providing the tools and guidance to make it, I'm not going to say calm, that's that place. Anyways, I'm a matchmaker, a therapist, a sounding board for whatever it takes to help you figure out what your goals are and where you want to live in Brooklyn. I don't care where you live. I don't care how much money you spend, but I will help you figure out what your comfort level is, what you're looking for in a home, and what neighborhood might be a good match for you. And I work with an incredible team that is on this call, Lisa and Rashida, all of the time to make these deals happen. And I think it's important that one of the first things you should learn in this class is it's important to build your team. Have people that know each other, have rapport with each other, that can hold each other accountable, that you have vetted, that you like their communication style. The team is important because they are going to trying to be working together to make this transaction as little as stressful as possible. Lisa was just telling us about a deal she has with a lawyer that's somebody's uncle, which is one of the things that we'll get to in classes. Do not hire relatives or anybody that's going to do you a favor. You want a professional team of people that you vetted, you like, and want to work with, and hopefully know each other and have done transactions with each other before and have been in the industry a long time. So any of the mortgage professional, the lawyer, the broker, they didn't just start doing this last week. You want vetted industry experts that can prepare you for the pitfalls of this process. And I'm going to turn it over to Lisa first. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey guys. So yeah, my name's Lisa Yonchi. I'm a loan officer at Cross Country Mortgage. I have been doing this for about 11 years now. I really love working with first-time homebuyers like Victoria. It's what I really enjoy doing, helping someone buy their first place. It's exciting, it's scary, and me and your whole team are here to help. I do deals all over the country and all over the New York area, but New York City is pretty much about 90% of my business: condos, co-ops, multifamilies. Basically, if it's residential, I can do it. Excited to answer your questions and see how we can help make this year or in the future the time that we get you in a home. You're muted, Victoria.
Go ahead, Rashida.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rashida Sadiq. I'm the real estate attorney. Been practicing for over 20 years now. I represent lots of first-time buyers in all of the boroughs. I pride myself on being able to walk you through the process, things that you should be looking for. The information is knowledge, and this process can be stressful, whether you're buying a co-op, a condo, or a house, whether it's your first time or your fifth time. So as an attorney, you want to make sure that you understand the documents you're signing, the contract, if you're purchasing co-op or condo, the due diligence. My office is located downtown Brooklyn, but as I said, I do practice in all of the boroughs and also in northern New Jersey. So I look forward to speaking with you on the legal aspect of getting you into contract and the things you should be looking out.
Thanks, guys. So we're going to just jump into, okay, first thing always is assembling your team. You want personal referrals. You want, this is not working. you guys can hear me now, right? Okay, good. Okay, so you want personal referrals, you want to interview people, always say call and make sure that you know that you're making the right decision. Our clients are like, there was somebody on your list, I just picked them. And now I'm not happy. I'm like, did you call anybody else and make sure that was the right person for you? You want to make sure that it's a good match. We're all working together, and communication is a really big, important part of this conversation. So don't just pick somebody because somebody said they're good. Call them, interview them, make sure you like them and that they're qualifying. I have a list of questions you should ask me and anybody else that you're considering hiring for your team. I don't shy away from that. I'm up for the challenge, but you want to make sure that you're vetting people. There's a job and you're hiring them to do a good job, and you want them to do a good job. So they should prove that they are going to be able to. I've worked with this team for a long time, so I know when we work together, we do a great job. And if you like us, then it's probably a good match. So these are the 3 people you need for the first team building. And that's where people start. A lot of people like to start, oh, I'm on Street Easy, I'm looking. You want to assemble your team. But the first person you really want to talk to is the mortgage professional to figure out what your buying power is. We don't want to start going on the internet, going out to look at open houses. One, the other brokers that are representing the sellers don't want buyers that are showing up without, or to open houses is one thing, but for private appointments without a pre-approval. You want a pre-approval in hand so you know what your buying power is. And so if you love that property, you can actually make a move and not be scrambling to catch up for all the other buyers that are prepared. Our job is to prepare you. I give you homework. Day 1 is to make sure your pre-approval is done, get your cover letter, get your revenue submit offer form done before you even go out and look at property, so that if you fall in love, even if your plan isn't to buy for another year, if you find your favorite, oh my God, this apartment, I have to have it, you are ready. I want you to be prepared. And that's my job, is to get you in that position, even though it seems like, why am I doing this now? I'm not ready. We're getting you there. So I could go a little bit more into the buying fiduciary responsibilities of the buyer's broker, but I'm gonna let Lisa talk about getting pre-approved. What does that look like? Lisa, we can't hear you if you've muted yourself. Lisa.
I think much more personal than people think. I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions. I want to know what your job history is. What is this going to be your forever home? Is this something you think you might buy for and live in for 5 years or so? Where are you living? What's your income like? Are you W-2 or are you self-employed? How much can you put down? Is that coming from a gift from a family member, or is that already in your savings account, or from someplace else? These are all really important questions to figure out the right program for you. I have tons of first-time homebuyers programs, some of which are income restricted, some of which are not. So that's the first conversation we're going to have. And just these first-time homebuyers programs, the idea is that you haven't owned a home for 3 years. So if it was 10 years ago, you're considered a first-time homebuyer. If it was last year, then you're not a first-time homebuyer. After we do all that and you fill out an online application, it's super user-friendly, it's super easy to use. I will do a soft pull on your credit, not a hard pull, a soft pull. I will crunch the numbers and I will get you a pre-approval. That pre-approval is really a fluid document. So as you start to see more things with Victoria, we can fine tune that pre-approval to where you actually land. Maybe right now you're like, I don't know, maybe a condo, maybe a co-op, maybe a single family if I can afford it. That's totally fine. Along with the first-time homebuyers programs, there's FHA, which allows you to put as little as 3.5% down. FHA is primarily for single family and multifamily homes. Co-ops, most co-ops are going to require you to put 20% down. And I think the biggest misconception is that if you're self-employed, you can't buy a home. Totally not true. I've worked with, I don't even know how many self-employed borrowers. It's totally possible. We want to look at your tax returns. And even if you're not going to buy for a year or two, if you're self-employed, you want to talk to a mortgage professional now, so that when you are ready to buy, your tax returns are in the right place to maximize your buying. Yeah, and then you're going to, with that pre-approval, go out with Victoria, find stuff, and then we're in a really good position for when you find the offer. Last thing I'll say about why doing this upfront is so important. A lot of times when you put in an offer, the seller's agent is going to call me, because no one wants to accept an offer for someone that can't get money from the bank. So they're going to call me and they're going to ask me questions. And the more work I do up front to show that you are so pre-approved for this mortgage, it's not going to be a problem, the easier it is for you to be the one that gets the accepted offer on the property that you want. I think that's about it, Victoria.
Great. So now that you've figured out what your buying power is and you're ready to start actually really going looking at property out in the real world, not just on the internet, we are going to do a couple things. I'm going to go over what my job is. You definitely want a buyer's broker in New York City. Yes, I know a lot of people have been reading about in the news which broker fees are changing. In New York City, almost a majority of the brokers are encouraging sellers to still pay buyers brokers because they understand the value of the two sides of the deal and how much work gets done by the buyer's broker. So most cases, I don't see any listings that I'm looking for clients with right now. Just put an offer in yesterday. I have a lot of clients out there. The main brokerages that are in neighborhoods that are predominantly revenue-based brokerages are still getting sellers to pay for buyer's brokers fees. So don't be worried about what's happening in the news about buyer's brokers fees. That's affecting the rest of the country, and you still deserve and should get representation because there's so many things that you just don't know. It's not a scare tactic. It's just that then don't pick me. I'm not saying you have to pick me. I'm saying pick somebody. It's an important job and guidance and industry expertise that you need to have at your side to get you through this deal. Lisa and I were, and Rashida just talking about the deal that Lisa had. And she's like, thank God that these other people are on this team. Otherwise this deal would have fallen apart because, and the buyers just don't know what to do in those positions. So your job is to guide you through the process. In most cases, there's no cost to you. If there would be a cost, we've discussed that. And you want to pick people based on personality type and you're picking advisors. These are your trusted advisors that you're going to confide in to help you along this process. We're on your team to support you. So why buy now? Anybody? Why buy now? Your rent's too damn high. You want to do your own investment, you make your own design, long-term equity. How much are people paying in rent right now? That's the one thing that was driving my clients this morning when we were going over their offer. Okay, how much money have I spent over the years paying somebody else's mortgage and money I'll never see again? She's okay, but I'm going to pay all this money in interest. But that interest can just end up being your rent that you pay. And all the principal is going into the equity of the property that you're going to pull out in the future. So don't think of this at this huge number that's not good. It's actually building you something long-term equity in a property. So that is the biggest benefit. I've been in my house now 14 years. I did not think I would last here 5 years, and I could not afford to rent in this neighborhood if I moved. So it's one of the smartest thing I did because rents are going to continue to go up. Prices are going to continue to go up. The sooner you get into the market, the more you're getting ahead so that you can upgrade in the future. I should be upgrading my house, but also I'm not making as much more money than I should to do the upgrades to stay in this neighborhood. So I'm going to stay in my house that I love so much. There we do have the rent versus buy matrix that's from the New York Times that we always refer to people to, and they just updated those numbers based on what's happening in the world right now. So Farah's going to put a link to the chat with the rent to buy matrix to figure out if buying is right for you. It might not be for everybody. The people that it's not right for is you have a rent stabilized or rent controlled apartment, or you're leaving in New York permanently in the next 2 years. You're going to buy something if you're planning on putting down roots, or that your long-term plan is to come back here, even if you are going to leave in the future. So check that out. Okay, so now your team is assembled. Next slide, sorry. And next slide after the thing. Yep, there's other people you might need. Contractors, architects, inspectors. Those are people that we can refer to you, and you can call around. You're going to do the same thing and vet them. I'm not saying, hey, you should go with Joe. He's the best plumber I've ever worked with. You can say, here's Joe's number and 5 other numbers. Please call them and pick the one that's right. I don't want to say Joe's the best plumber ever, and then he messes something up and then you're mad at me. But I do who I work with, and they usually do. If I'm referring somebody, they've probably done work on my own house. Rashida was my lawyer when I bought my house. Okay, so now you found your team and we've gotten the financing bit down. Where are you looking? Where are you looking for property? On StreetEasy, on Realtor.com? You can put it in the chat if you want. We have a back-end database that puts all of the information all in one place for most platforms. There are some places that don't update their information. Realtor.com, Redfin, Trulia, Zillow often has the wrong info. They'll have the taxes wrong. They'll say something's a co-op when it's a condo. They'll say it's a condo when it's a co-op. So you want to make sure you're getting your information from a reliable source so that you're not wasting your time. Also, you should be sending a list of things you want to see and when you're available to your broker, and then they're just going to schedule everything for you. Hey, I'm available on Saturday from 12 to 4. Here are the listings I want to see. Can you make a plan, contact all the brokers and organize everything for me? That is part of their job. Their job is no longer to find some needle in the haystack listing that doesn't exist anymore because the internet has changed that. The value of having a buyer's broker, it has nothing to do with finding the place anymore. It's about getting you to the closing table, to guiding you through the process so that you actually find a property to move into and can close on. Because that is the biggest challenge with so many buyers in the market right now. I don't know if anybody's been to an open house lately, that something that just came on and it's priced correctly. It's a little bit crazy. My clients that put in an offer that got accepted today lost out on 2 other places just because they were looking at the top of their budget and competing with people that have a lot more room in their budget to go up. So you want to make sure that you're working as a seasoned professional to guide you to get you to the closing table. We talked about the financing fit. We want everyone to feel empowered and educated through this process. So I want to just, after we're looking out and if people are putting in offers, what do you think that, Lisa, people could be doing to make their offers more competitive from the financing part?
I think that, so 20% down is always going to be a more competitive offer typically than 10% down. So keep that in mind when you look at places, or also just having all of your documents so that everything shows that it's great, that you are pre-approved, is a really big deal. I think, like Victoria said at the beginning, preparation is really helpful to getting those offers. And sometimes I'll do pre-approvals at a higher pre-approval than the offer they're going to put in, just so that, which they qualify for, just so that the sellers know that it's not like this is their absolute max set. I think sometimes buyers are scared about that, being like, oh, then they're going to make me do that higher thing. No, that's not how it works. The real agents just want to say that if your absolute max loan amount is 710 and the offer has a 710 loan amount, that's going to scare a realtor, because they're going to be like, what about if something changes on their income and then suddenly they can't qualify? Those are some tips that I do as well. And also, because we have, if you can't put 20% down, we have conventional products with 10% versus FHA. Some properties, it's going to be better to do private mortgage insurance. It actually might even be cheaper than regular FHA mortgage insurance, and will get you the offer, because sometimes sellers agents are a little scared about FHA. So those are things to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think that's been a real change, because it used to feel the other way, is like not putting in a pre-approval that shows the number that you can afford higher. And that changed, that dynamic changed in the last couple of years. And I think that brokers just got more educated about it, and buyers too. It changes from a buyer's to seller's market, and that also can change your strategy for that. And you want to know what is the best strategy. Should you be putting in a number that's higher? But you want people 100% to feel confident you're going to get to the closing table. It's not going to feel great if they're worried that you're going to close. They might not move forward with you, especially if you're competing against other offers. So making sure your offer is really competitive and looks great to the sellers and the seller's side of the deal. From the seller side of the deal, what are you looking for, Rashida, if we were putting in an offer to you?
As a seller's attorney, if I put on my hat as a seller's attorney,
Yeah.
we really don't come into when you're putting in the offer. It's normally when we get the contract of sale, the offer has been negotiated. But I guess.
But are there any like red flags? Oh, this buyer, they have this and on their thing. So
I'm just thinking for the contract of sale, I guess for a seller would be maybe the timing. Are you able to close pretty quickly? I think that would be if a buyer is looking to close pretty quickly, and if the seller is looking to close pretty quickly and a buyer is coming in and say, hey, we can close within 45 days versus 60 days. Maybe that's something that gives them a little bit of leverage on that aspect of it. As attorney, I highly advise against waiving any things like inspection contingencies, appraisal contingencies, and mortgage contingencies. And if as a buyer, if you were doing that to make yourself competitive, I would really advise you to have a serious conversation with your agent, with your attorney, and with your realtor, because you're potentially putting your down payment at risk. So that could be some leverage, but it's a very risky leverage if you're waiving any of those type of contingencies.
You never know what can happen. That deal's falling apart this week because the poor person lost their job. It's how the
Yeah.
cookie crumbles, and there's nothing they could do to control that situation. It's not like they're getting fired, laid off. It's all out of their control. And so they're now not going to get their mortgage from the bank. And so we can talk about that a little bit more if people have questions about how that works, but that would be your financing situation. If you didn't have a financing contingency and you lost your job, you could potentially lose your whole down payment. But now that you can't get the loan, you're hopefully getting your down payment back. So let's see, what's the next step? So we figured out the financing piece and the strategy on working with a buyer's broker to negotiate and find you the right property. I've talked a little bit about assembling your team, but I think I missed going over about hiring New York City experts. I think I said in the beginning, maybe when I was muted, about hiring your uncle. You want to hire New York City experts that they are doing this every day. They are not also doing divorce. They are also not opening checkings and savings accounts, that this is their expertise, that they do real estate is their bread and butter. They're doing co-ops and condos and townhouses on a daily basis. And that so that you know that they're the expertise. Hiring your uncle or somebody that is doing you a favor because they're a lawyer, it's going to cost you money, time, and possibly your dream home if you don't pick the right team to work with. And that's why it's important you vet these people. And that's why we offer this class, so that you can get to know us, but also so you can figure out what you're looking for and how to ask the right questions to find the right team for you. But it's definitely not your uncle. I'm going to tell you 5 more times. Make sure and people that have been doing this for a long time, anybody that just got out of law school, anybody that just started working at the mortgage broker company or just got their agent license, you want seasoned experts so that that historic knowledge from all the things that they've seen hit the fan, you have the benefit of learning from everybody else's mistakes and pitfalls so that they can be aware of how to avoid those for you. And that's really what it is. You're never going to be with somebody that's been doing this for a year and have that doesn't have as many transactions that you need to really guide you through this process. So you want somebody with a lot of transactions under the belt, helping buyers and sellers so they know from both angles how the deal can fall apart and make sure that they avoid going down that path. So you're ready. You have figured out what you can buy. You figured out your buying strategy. You figured out your timing. You figured out your budget, what you're looking for. I encourage people always, if you're not sure what neighborhoods to look in, ask your friends that live there what they like and don't like. Go have brunch there before and after open houses and take your friends out and get to see somebody that you haven't seen in a while to learn about the different neighborhoods you're considering. Because you might get pushed into a neighborhood that you don't really know that well if your budget is confining you from being in the neighborhood that you first wanted to pick. So that's one advice on how to start figuring out where you want to be narrowing down your search. If you have 20 neighborhoods, there's vastly different property types in those neighborhoods. And they come with different amenities, like co-ops come usually with doormen. So if you want a doorman, you're probably going to be in a co-op, and co-ops are only in certain neighborhoods. You're not going to find a lot of co-ops in Williamsburg, but you will in Brooklyn Heights, in old buildings, or in Prospect Heights, parts of Park Slope maybe, but not in Gowanus. Gowanus is going to be mostly new construction. If you want the brand new gym and all those kind of stuff, you need to figure out what neighborhoods actually have the amenities and building typology that are going to meet your needs. And your commute, are you going to be always working from home, or is your job going to change? You can take those into effect. You want to be by a park. I always tell people to make their 5 deal breakers and then realize that they will probably have to sacrifice half of that list. So 2.5 things. So don't get your head stuck on these are the things I have to have. Realize that this is a lot about give and take and sacrificing to feel. So you're never going to get a friend's apartment. Those were not real. These were on TV. You need to figure out in reality what you're going to get. And that's by going and seeing things. And I always say for the rental market, if you used to go out and see 10 things in the same neighborhood and you can't find what you're looking for, probably doesn't exist. In the sales market, maybe it's 20. Or like it was so close, there was this one little thing. And then, hey, can you fix that thing by doing it yourself in the future? Like putting in a dishwasher or a washer dryer. So you're searching, you're using the internet. We talked about what platforms you're using. You want to make sure you're working with a buyer's broker that it's going to give you, collate all that information in one place for you. But otherwise, Street Easy is the way to go. In my opinion, it's really user friendly, and most brokers are having their information there. Unless you're looking in like Queens or Canarsie, I can give you some tips on for those neighborhoods where to be looking. And just when you're on these places, don't reach out to the broker that's on the listing. That other broker represents the seller, or they're paying Street Easy, Zillow, or Trulia to have their name there. You want to send the listings to your broker that you've already vetted, and they will do, that is their job. Don't think you're wasting their time. They'll ask questions for you. They will find out details for you. They will set up the appointments for you and get you in as soon as you can around your schedule. Send the listings to your broker. Don't, because then that seller's broker is just going to start calling you all the time and try to get you to be your client. Because so your broker didn't educate you to tell you not to do that. Then let's see, making an offer. Like I was give an example about my clients that got the accepted offer yesterday. The past 2 apartments that they put offers in on, they were not the first ones there. They were not the first offer. I always say it's very important to try and be the first offer. Both of those properties were into bidding wars, and we came in on the later side of those bidding wars. So I didn't have the rapport information from the broker at the beginning of the negotiation process of where the numbers were looking. They did give me some guidance, but we still were very far off. In both my clients did not come in second or third. They came in 5th and 6th in these bidding wars. So my strategy to them was, okay, either if you're going to go to something that just hit the market, you need to get there on the first day it's listed and get our offer in that morning. We have everything ready to go. You love it. Let's be prepared. Or we go and look at things that have been sitting on the market a while, that not everybody's rushing to because it just hit the market, because you have more leverage and more of a position to be first and negotiate from the buying perspective, because they've been sitting on the market. And there's not necessarily something wrong with that property. It's just that at the moment in time, what happened is that it got looked over. It was overpriced in this case. And so they ended up being the first offered asking to make sure that they got the deal, because we ran the comps afterwards because they had just made a price reduction, and because we wanted to make sure nobody else came in and scooped it up behind us, and got the offer accepted. So, and we're having an inspection tomorrow. Things move pretty quickly. So once the offer is accepted, and those terms need to be negotiated that we just brought up, financing contingency, mortgage contingency, inspection contingency. So we're having an inspection this week. That's when the deal sheets will go out, and the lawyers will start doing the due diligence. They want to hear from us that all's clear at the inspection. There were no problems. And that so that they can then go down, if in this co-op case, sometimes the minutes and other information is available to them, but otherwise sometimes the lawyers need to go down there and get the information from the co-op's office, right? So what's happening once the deal sheets go out, Rashida and Lisa?
So I guess I can step in, because let's say typically once your offer is accepted, the realtors will send your attorney a deal sheet. And the deal sheet, as Victoria said, is a summary of your offer. If you're purchasing a co-op and a condo, that triggers also the realtors to send over the co-op or the condominium due diligence documents. That's the offering plan, the financials, the board meeting minutes. Because even though your offer is accepted, if you're purchasing those type of properties, there has to be a due diligence. The purpose of your attorney during that due diligence is to find out if there's any issues with the building. What's the history of maintenance increases? Is there litigation going on? Is there upcoming assessments? Because even though you physically like the unit, you want to know what type of building you're buying into, financially, legally, etc. That due diligence can take anywhere between a week, sometimes more or less, depending on the management company. If something comes up in that due diligence that you're not aware of, there's an assessment that's going to start next month for 2 years. That's something that can be negotiated, whether you want to continue on with the contract or whether you want to go back to the seller and say, hey, we want you to pay for that assessment because when we put in an offer, we didn't know about that. Or if there's an upcoming maintenance increase. So all of these things happen prior to you signing the contract, but after your offer is accepted. The same thing as Victoria was stating is if your inspection is done during that time, during that period after your offer is accepted. If you're looking at a house, there's no due diligence that's done as far as physically the property. I personally, as an attorney, I like to look up the property to see if there's any violations. I try to find out the certificate of occupancy, but a title company does that more in-depth search once you're in contract. But regardless of any type of property, prior to signing, you should be doing an inspection so that you're aware of the physical aspects of the property, because all of the contracts are going to state that you've done your inspection, you're purchasing the unit as is or the house as is, and you understand the condition of the property. I think that answers your question, Victoria.
Yeah, do you want to talk about the property disclosure form changes?
And that's really more for a seller. I think for a buyer aspect, in New York prior to May 20th, buyers used to get a credit of $500 at closing, like a reimbursement of your inspection. Now that credit is no longer given. Some attorneys are still couching it that they can give that inspection and not have sellers fill out this form. There's a form called a property condition disclosure statement that the sellers fill out to the actual knowledge. So it's not that they have to go and do any research or do anything. They fill out this form. A lot of it may say unknown or no, but it's a form that the sellers give to the buyers once the contract is sent out. However, the form and the statute specifically states the buyer cannot rely on the statement. The buyer has to do their own due diligence. They have to do their own inspection. So even if the seller is filling out that form, you still have to do your own inspection of the property because that's what you're relying on, not the form. So really, as a buyer's part of it, it's just a matter of you getting this form and you're not getting the $500 credit as a reimbursement of your inspection statement in your inspection. So 100% should be doing your inspection. Now, this does not apply to co-ops or condos. So you're not going to get this property condition disclosure statement or credit if you're buying a co-op or a condo. It only applies to houses, 1 to 4 family houses. So it's in-depth, but yeah, a little bit.
I think it's just important though, because I think that people they rely on the inspection report, and if they are getting that disclosure, to know what they're buying, and things happen. So you want to make sure you're doing your own due diligence with the inspection, and not relying just on the disclosure form, because obviously
it's
perfect.
Yeah, it specifically states do not rely on the form. The statute states do not rely on the form, but they do require the seller to complete the form.
And you went over the due diligence, like the finances and the minutes, and going over offering plan and all the missing amendments that are often have to be dug for. And so, Lisa, if we give you the address now that we have an accepted offer, what are you doing on your end?
At the same time that Rashida is negotiating the terms of the contract, I am basically getting everything prepared so we're ready to go when we have fully executed contracts. So that means signed by both buyer and seller. So I'm updating any documents we need from your pre-approval. I'm just making sure everything's ready to go, because once we have fully executed contracts, then this is a live deal. By that, what I mean is we get you initial disclosures to e-sign, we order the appraisal, and we work to get you through underwriting as quickly as possible. And I have to say that the underwriting portion of it is one of the places that I think me and my team really shine, because we just get you through underwriting incredibly quickly, in part because I've done so much work up front so that we almost have a complete file. Why is getting through underwriting quickly important? Because the faster you get through underwriting, the faster you meet that deadline of your mortgage contingency, which Rashida has detailed in the contract. And if you're doing a co-op, then the faster you get through your mortgage contingency letter is an essential part of your board package, which Victoria will talk about in a second. So the faster you get that commitment letter, the faster you're able to pop it into your board package and get your board interview as soon as possible. So we talked a lot about teams on this call, but this is one of those places where it's really helpful to work with an attorney who has a very good relationship with your mortgage person. Because when Rashida is doing a lot of her due diligence, she's going to let me know if there's any issues. Like, hey, this happened with the co-op, or hey, there's this. Is that going to be a problem? 9 times out of 10, because I have so many products, I can figure out a way around an issue with a co-op or condo. It's really about knowing about it as soon as possible. Because at the same time that we're approving you, we're approving the building. While you're working with my team on underwriting, another part of my team is working on getting all the documents we need from the condo or co-op to approve that building as well. So the more we get upfront insight from due diligence of the attorney, it's in the end just a win for you. When we have that mortgage contingency, then you will get an approval letter that you can, commitment letter to put in your file, and it'll have some basic contingencies, like maybe an updated pay stub or your first year of homeowners insurance. When you purchase a property, you always pay your first year of homeowners insurance prior to closing. That doesn't mean it has to be paid the second you sign contracts, not at all. But that's usually a condition for closing. And then if you have a co-op, then Rashida and or Victoria will work on getting you your board package. One thing I'll talk about with rate, because obviously that's of interest. We don't have the rates we had 3 years ago. Everyone knows that now. That's not a shock. The good news is rates are starting to come down, and slowly but surely, which is actually what we want to see, so that we know when they go down, they'll be where they are. They're not going to spike back up if they go down too quickly. The fact is, whatever loan you get right now is not going to be the loan you have for 30 years. It's probably not even going to be the loan you have for 5 years. Because when we're finally out of the inflation, which looks like we're on its way, you're probably going to be refinancing in probably 12 to 18 months. So that's a conversation we'll have when we talk about products. I will tell you that our cross country is offering a $1,500 lender credit for your refinance if we do your purchase. So that will basically be $1,500 off of your closing costs when you refinance, precisely because we know everyone's going to be refinancing in about a year or two. So something to keep in mind and something we'll definitely talk about. So I think, Victoria, now we could talk about board approval and wrapping up.
Yeah, so what happens with the process is if you've gotten into contract and we've done everything that we're supposed to do, we're there. We are going to be working on your board package. And we cannot submit your board package until we have your commitment letter. So you're doing everything you can to make sure the bank has everything it needs from you to get that commitment letter. So they're the priority, not the board package. But also at the same time, you're reaching out to your friends and professionals that you need to get referral letters from, and we're building the package out so that when we do get the commitment, we're ready to send, because we have to send that within 3 to 5 business days from getting the commitment letter. So we want to make sure that we're ready to go and not leaving that to the last minute. We do lots of these. Farrah's an expert at it, and we're fine tuning your letters. I'll read all the letters to make sure there's no red flags. Let's change some language around here. We don't want to make it seem you have any bad habits that the board might be pick up on. And then we also are preparing you for the interview. So once we get the commitment letter, then we're making a beautiful package. And depending on how the co-op board wants to receive it, sometimes they want a giant pack of paper. Even in the world where we're trying to all be environmentally friendly, they want the physical copy plus a digital copy for them to put their hands on. And we usually send both, unless they're using a platform like Board Packager. There's lots of different ways that people do it these days. Every board is different, but there's nothing we haven't seen, which is also dysfunctional boards that are like, I don't know. And we make it happen for them and do a really great job. So we want to make sure that you're prepared for the interview, and prepping you for the interview, what to say, what to not say, what to wear, how to act is an important part of that. Also to make sure that you get approved, because we could have gotten all of this way and the board say, no. And that is not what you want to hear. You want to make sure that you have addressed any issues, made a beautiful board package, and say everything right in there, because they can kill everything. We don't want you as their neighbor. We don't think you're going to be a good neighbor. They now have to disclose why, but you want to make sure that you're passing, because that is the last hurdle. Because once you have that, then you're going to get clear to close. And that's when Lisa and Rashida are working to make sure the bank has you clear to close and getting you to the closing table. And that is before the closing table. We have the final walkthrough, which happens 24 to 40 hours before the closing, to make sure the property is being delivered into the condition that we expect it to be, that there's not a giant leak, that there's not all of a sudden mice infestation, or the refrigerator is not working. You want all the appliances to be working, all the outlets to be working. We go in and check everything. Then we sign off on it, or if they've had to do any repairs. And that's when we go to the closing table. So you ladies talk about what happens then.
Okay, so I just wanted to take a little moment, because we didn't talk a lot about the contract and once we're in contract, So I'm going to just mention the couple of things that when your attorney is explaining the contract to you, what you need to be thinking about. There's contingencies like your mortgage contingency. If you're purchasing a co-op, there's going to be a co-op approval contingency. If you're purchasing a condo, there's going to be a provision that the condo has to issue what we call as a right of first refusal. And then you also want to be aware of the timeframes in your contract, such as your mortgage contingency, which is typically 30 to 45 days. And if you're purchasing a house or a condo, you have typically on or about 60 days to close. And if you're purchasing a co-op, you have roughly about 60 to 90 days to close. So as you're locking in your interest rate, you want to have contract conversations with your attorney, with your agent, also with your mortgage person, so that you're in compliance with those time periods, because it's very important as a buyer that you're aware of that, especially when you're thinking about locking in your rate, as Lisa had mentioned earlier. So you're in contract, you need to understand, what does it mean when, what is my down payment that I gave, that 10%? What are the risks associated with? Because once you get your mortgage, you're in a firm contract. Once you get approved by the board, you're in a firm contract. Condo, as I said, once they issue that waiver, it's a firm contract. Both types of all types of transaction, the seller has to give you good title to the property. So that's another contingency. And once all of that comes together, then we get to that point of you scheduling that closing, because now you have your bank clearance to close. You have the co-op approval, you have the condo waiver. If it's a house, you have good title to the property. The seller's cleared up everything. And now we're at that on or about 60-day with a 30-day grace period, or 90-day for a co-op, and your attorney is scheduling the closing with all of the parties. Very important is that bank clearance, because even though your commitment was issued, there's a time period between the closing, the commitment issuance, and that closing. And it's very important that your status quo stays the same, because the bank needs you to have everything the same when on that day of the closing. And then your closing, once it's set, is typically about an hour and a half to 2 hours of you signing a lot of the disclosures from the bank that they prior gave to you electronically. Now you're signing that in person.
I think we lost Lisa. Oh, no, Lisa's still there. Somebody died out on the
I think
internet.
Rashida froze. Rashida froze.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Sorry about that.
Yep.
Okay, so I was just explaining that once you have that clearance to close, we can schedule the closing, but that means that your bank has been giving you the clearance, the title is good, the co-op has given the approval, and the condo has given the right of first refusal waiver.
Yes. That's what's happening, what's in contract. And then we're getting to the closing table, and then you get your keys, and do not schedule movers the date of the closing. It's very stressful. There's going to be a lot of moving parts. You're not going to be able to know what even the amount on the checks until the morning of, when Rashida and Lisa finalize all those numbers, and you're going to have to go to the bank before the closing, the day of. You will not know ahead of time. And it's always so stressful for people, but that's just how it is, because they're calculating each tiny little thing. A lot of math and calculators happening. So now I think that we've gone over everything. I'm going to just remind people that this recording will be available online. There'll be a Spotify version of it with all of our resources. You'll get our Buying into Brooklyn class. You'll get some resources that we'll send out over the next couple of weeks. And you can reach out to any of us to talk about your specific problem or situation, or whatever you want to address, or about your goals. And even if you're not ready to buy this year, it'll happen in a couple of years. So we're going to open up for questions now. And we look forward to hearing from you to get you guys rolling. So go ahead. You can take yourself off mute, or you can put it in the chat. There was already actually a question in the chat, which was, is it beneficial to put 30% or 25% down if you're able versus 20%? I say yes. Anybody else? Yes.
I think it definitely helps an offer. Rate-wise, people always ask me. Sometimes it helps to put 25% down or 30% down to get a better rate, but I don't think that should necessarily be the reason why you put that much more down, simply because while definitely putting more down might help with the property, also realize this is going to be your first time buying a place. You don't want to, at closing, have $200 in your bank account. You want to have some savings for the first year to know what you're going to do. But yes, if you can put 30 or 25% down for an offer, it's definitely helpful. And for programs, it gives you more availability of programs as well.
Someone back up. Here we go. Other questions besides that? Did we miss any others in the chat? Oh, just a bunch of comments saying they couldn't hear me.
Oh.
Anybody else want to take themselves off mute and ask any questions?
I think someone just put a question in the chat for you.
One more question. Great, thanks. Doesn't matter the source where you will get your down payment from. Oh, yes, Lisa.
Great question.
Great
Great question. Thank you for asking that, Angelia. All banks require all money to be sourced. What does that mean? That means we have to know where the money is coming from. Your down payment could 100% come as a gift from a family member. It can 100% come from mutual funds or stocks. It can come from a retirement program you have, if there are terms of that program that allow you to draw from. It cannot come from cash at home in a shoebox. If its money is coming from a family member, it has to be in their account, and we're gonna have to see it come out of their account and go into yours. That doesn't need to be done now, but at some point we will need to see that. Sometimes I have borrowers who are borrowing money or have money in foreign accounts. Not impossible, more tricky with more paperwork. So that's something that we would want to talk about. There are also limits to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Again, not impossible, but if your money is going to be coming out of cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, you probably want to pull that sooner rather than later.
Other questions?
Oh, actually, I just want to say one thing because we always forget to say this. And when someone asks, I'm always like, oh gosh, I forgot to say. Just so you guys know, you can talk to any of us after this call, and it's not like you have to pay for such services. I always forget to say that. We are all here to talk to you guys, to offer you advice, whether you're going to buy now or whether you're going to buy. I've had clients that it was like 5 years out, and we had conversations to get them in a place where they could be to buy. I just wanted to reiterate that because I always forget to say that.
Yep. This is a long journey sometimes, a path to get you there. I don't understand this question about, does it matter what about Susu? What are the biggest differences between buying in New York City versus other places in New York? New York City is this whole beast. It's not like anywhere else. So I know that people always are like, I bought in California. In California, there's no lawyers. The broker and the acts as the lawyer, and they write up all the contracts. So there's many different nuances, and New York City is, there's no co-ops in the rest of the country in most places. Like, it's a totally different beast. So if you've done it somewhere else, great. You have a head start on a lot of people, but New York City is unique. Unique New York. Sorry.
And this is another reason
that-
why like a rocket mortgage or something like that is really problematic for New York because they don't understand co-ops. They don't understand transfer taxes and various things, mortgage tax, which is a specific New York thing. They don't understand that. I always tell people, look, if you're going to buy a single family home in Nebraska, Rocket Mortgage could probably do that very well. If you're going to buy a property in New York, it's just not going to work.
Wait, for now the questions are rolling in. Go ahead.
Just I know the person previous had asked about a susu. So just to clarify, a susu is probably like the Caribbean communities where you are entering, you're getting cash, you give it to one individual, and that's how individuals also save up funds. So I think Lisa mentioned it's going to be about sourcing. So if you are taking money from a susu that you're using for a purchase, you definitely want to have a conversation with your mortgage person. I have dealt with situations where they have done that and they need to source the money that you gave into that susu with the person that's controlling it, and there may be some other things. But if you are getting funds from a susu, you want to have a conversation with your loan person so they understand what the susu is and go over the logistics of what the bank may need.
And I actually have a client that is doing that was just asking me about a susu. So that's really funny that it came up. It can be very complicated from a bank perspective. And to be honest with you, what they decided to do instead was to borrow money from a family member and then balance out post-closing from the susu. Not to say it's not impossible, but 100% detailed conversation with a mortgage professional.
And Lisa, somebody's asking, all in all, in ballpark estimate, what percentage, how much do you, on top of the selling price, should you put aside for closing costs, inspection, etc.?
I think Rashida would probably answer that better than me.
Yeah, I normally tell clients if you're looking at a condo or a house, the kind of roundabout is about 4 to 6% for of that, whatever that purchase price is going to be for your closing costs. And the main thing is because in New York, when you're looking at a house or a condo, you pay your mortgage tax, you have to get title insurance, etc. So that can really add up. Mortgage tax can be nearly 2% of that purchase price, depending on the amount of the mortgage that you're applying for. If you're doing 80%, et cetera, it's over 500,000. A general rule is around 4 to 6%. 6% is really high, so I would say probably around 4%. If it's a co-op, very little. It's really negligible because you're only really paying is your loan charges, maybe some miscellaneous co-op fees, and then your attorney legal fee. So co-ops have really low closing costs, but for a condo or a house, you're roughly about 4% of that purchase price.
And somebody else asked about the co-op board giving a reason they rejected you.
So I can answer that as well. Co-ops do not have to give any reason for rejecting you. Most co-ops will not give a reason because of liability concerns. I had a client, unfortunately, today that they received a letter from the co-op and it was a rejection, and it was a simple, we're not approving you, and we're trying to get more information. Some co-ops may indicate, they may come back and ask about financials, and you can potentially try to get information from the management company or from the board if there's no management company on a reason. But most times the co-op will not give a reason for the rejection, unfortunately.
I also have to do a shout out for Victoria on this. I work on a lot of co-ops, and I don't know if I've ever had one decline board approval from Victoria, because they do a really good job of making sure that everything's going and that there are no surprises. So I've had 2 denials recently, and honestly, it was something that could have been solved if the realtors had done a little bit of a better job making sure that the deal and everything was, okay by the co-op, and instead they didn't. That's one of those examples where working with a really good realtor who has experience and does the time to make the board application package really well is going to really help you in the long run, because that really stinks.
I've only had one in my whole career, and that's a lot. Like 1 in 19 years is pretty great. And I have to say, give kudos to Farah though, because she really helps me. Like having 2 sets of eyes, somebody that's doing the organizing, I'm doing the content and prepping and doing the hand holding for the clients. Like this teamwork, as not everybody has all the skills. I hate Excel.
There's one refi question I just want to answer real quick, and then I do have to jump off. John said, if we do buy now with interest rates now, are there any major concerns to be aware of when considering to refinance? Great question. First of all, when you refinance, like Rashida said about closing costs, if you refinance a co-op, your closing costs are going to be very low. Your closing costs for a refinance can always be built into the loan as long as you have the equity to do. If you buy a condo or a single family, the refinance closing cost will still be extremely low or lower than the purchase, because we're going to do what's called a SEMA. So you won't pay the mortgage tax again, which is the biggest portion of your closing costs. The biggest difference between a refinance and a purchase is that a refinance is really a financial decision. Rates will go down. I will give you a closing cost worksheet. I'll say, this is how much the refinance is going to cost. We can roll in the closing costs or not. Here's your savings. You guys decide what you want to do. So it's a much easier process than the purchase, because you already know now what's involved, and we don't really have the seller to worry about it all. This is really just about getting you through the process. But that's basically the big difference. The only real danger of not being able to refinance is if your value goes down, which is unheard of in New York, and I've never actually seen a property that someone bought it 1 year and 2 years later it was significantly lower to a point that the refinance didn't make sense, or something happens for your situation that you're no longer qualified, like you lost your job or something has changed on that front. But then we just wait until you're in the right situation and we refinance you then.
Okay,
Um,
we answered all the questions and everybody's got to go. It's 6:07. Let's go get some dinner, guys. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you. Like I said, it doesn't cost anything to talk to any of us. We're happy to help, happy to give you the information that we have gathered over the years and our expertise to get you on the right path. We want you to end up reaching your goal of home ownership. And that's why we provide this class and all of the resources. So thank you guys so much for joining, and we hope to hear from you soon.